My goodness, that almost makes me sound nice. And I've never claimed to be nice. In fact, I'm not. Thank you all for your welcome tonight. How am I going to do this?
Where do you want it, Court?
Well, I'm not sure. These are in the way. Can you hear me if I just, I'll just talk loud. Yeah. Okay, let me preface my reading with, these stories are true. And these kind of stories happen to everybody, except that most people are too ashamed to talk about them to anybody. So one of the reasons I write these columns is to give people permission to actually talk about the things that really happen in their lives. This is written of, by, and for gay people, so it's intended for a gay male audience mostly, so you'll have to interpret as you can. Let's see. The stories are, how many of you remember the Carol Burnett show?
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the ongoing skits on the Carol Burnett show was the soap opera As the Stomach Turns. Okay, these are sort of like that. At the end of each episode, there was the questions, the questions they asked about the characters for the coming weeks. So each episode or each chapter ends up with some questions. All right, let's go for it. I'm still sure this is not a good idea. Okay, the tale of the birth of a queen. My name is Petunia Pap Smear, and this column is the beginning of my stories as a gay Mormon boy living in the crossroads of the West, coping with whatever the world decides to throw my way. A long, long time ago, during the Eisenhower administration, in gay years, this makes me older than God's dog. In a galaxy far, far away from West Hollywood, namely Cache Valley, I was born. According to the Chinese calendar, it was the year of the cock. How lucky am I? I'm a fifth-generation Cache Valley native, my ancestors having done the whole pioneer thing in the 1800s. And this means that my historical roots go much further back than my actual roots, which need another bottle of Clairol even as we speak. I was born on a potato and sheep farm in the Idaho end of Cache Valley. I always fantasized that it was spelled C-A-S-H Valley, and pretended that we could all be rich like Alexis Colby on Dynasty. According to Mormon tradition, when I was a month old, my father blessed me in the Ward Church house on the first Sunday in June. The very next day, after the blessing, they tore the church house down to make room for a new one. Of course, with me crossing the threshold, they would need to get rid of the evidence post-haste before the friends of J. Edgar Hoover in Salt Lake would find out. The demolition of the church building was perhaps the first sign that all would not go as officially planned for this little Mormon prince, or shall we say princess. Little did my parents nor anyone else realize that I would grow up to be a full-fledged, rainbow flag waving, high heel wearing, sheep tending Idahomo. The only problem being the outrunning of the sheep. It's hard to do in heels. Upon reaching adulthood, I've always said I may be getting older, but I refuse to grow up. It was time to put away girlish things, meaning the Susie Homemaker oven I stole from my sister, and become a full-fledged queen that I was apparently meant to be. It was time to choose a drag name. There are a couple of rules that govern how to choose a drag name. Number one, use your childhood pet's first name as your first name. I have to take these off, I can't see. That's better. Use the name of the street where you lived as a child as your last, the name of the street where you lived as a child as your last name. Well, my first pet's name was Fluffy. Oh. a white dog. And the street I lived on was Balls Avenue. Since I was a high-minded wannabe, I didn't think fluffy balls sounded very dignified. And being civic-minded, like all good queens should be, I chose a name that would help remind people of good health practices. I learned at the National Gay Men's Health Summit, after the Naked Sunrise Frolic Workshop, true, we got naked and danced around to 70s music and watched the sunrise, that every person should get a pap smear on a regular basis. I think this must be to check for hangnails, worms, or scurvy, or some damn thing. Oh, they don't make workshops like that anymore. Yeah. With my new name, size 24 miniskirt, size 14 pumps, and a borrowed wig, I threw on some glitter into my mustache and delved into the world of drag. Alas, I do not make a pretty drag queen. In fact, butt ugly is probably the better description. Perhaps I could be a stand-in for the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So here, now this is dated here. So here we are in 2008, and I present myself and my stories of conquest and defeat to you. I'm a geriatric drag queen with no style or grace, facing life's perils as they are thrown at me, but I'm sure having fun about it. And to quote Auntie Mame, "You got to live, live, live! Life's a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death." Okay, this story leaves us with several eternal questions. What exactly does a pap smear check for? Had I been reported to J. Edgar Hoover, do you think that he and I could have shared dresses? Is it tasteful to wear a miniskirt when you are size 24? How long can you tastefully let your roots grow between dye jobs? And at what point does a geriatric drag queen morph into a troll? At that point, will someone assign me a bridge to live under, or must I find it myself? These and other important questions shall be answered in future chapters of Perils of Petunia Pap Smear. All right, this next chapter, oh wait, this is something that you women are going to be way jealous about. Interchangeable nipples. Is it going to work? There we go. Are you jealous? Okay, these are my breasticles, and I have 18 pair of breasticles in various colors and assortments, and drawers full of nipples. All right. Let me introduce this one by saying my car, I call it Queertanic. And it was originally, the original Queertanic was a 1975 powder blue Buick Electra, the largest production vehicle that General Motors ever produced. And I loved it. Okay. And all of my friends in this is when I was living in Logan, I would drive to Salt Lake weekly to attend choir practice. And all of my friends in choir were wondering, how do you do that commute over and over? The way home to Logan can be fraught with danger and excitement. On my way home from the Salt Lake Men's Choir concert last night, it was nearing midnight. I was tired, and I stopped at the Brigham City rest area. Now, before your filthy minds dream up all sorts of images of lurid rest stop shenanigans, let me assure you, I really did have to pee. Now, I've always been entertained, and I might add a little bit titillated, by the graffiti that some adventurous authors compose on bathroom stall walls. In fact, I hold a special regard those essays which are able to rhyme. So, given the choice, I usually elect to use a stall rather than a urinal, if only for the expanded literary opportunities. On this particular occasion, the writers have been very prolific. Thus, Once my own personal bodily function was finished, I dare say that I tarried longer than the requisite three shakes on a zip in order that I might be able to read the advertisements. Long story short, while fishing for the toilet paper, I lost hold of my car keys, and to my horror, they went plop straight into the toilet. I panicked. This was very serious, as this is the one and only ignition key that existed on the planet for Quirtanic. Dumbfounded, I just stared down into the filthy, disgusting, and unflushed toilet for at least 2 minutes. Finally, in desperation, and with no other option in sight, I wrinkled up my nose, stuck my hand down into the icy cold, disgusting abyss. Unfortunately, rest area thrones are not designed for a queen. Those who made them made the drain pipe too small to accommodate an adult male hand, even one not wearing any press-on nails. In hindsight, I've come to believe that this fact may explain why public restrooms are so often wretchedly clogged. God forbid some poor sucker produce a really large turd. It can result in a stoppage that would resemble the Teton Dam. This really could have been a literal oh shit moment, but luckily I had ceased bodily functions at number 1 without proceeding on to number 2. I exited the stall and began looking around for something to reach down into the toilet with, to fish my keys out. Damn it, nothing suitable, usable in sight. With my anxiety level rising, I went outside the building to try to find something else. I saw some twigs in the bushes behind the building, and I started toward them. Just then, a drop-dead gorgeous 20-something guy with bulging muscles in all the right places started walking towards the restroom. Under normal circumstances, my natural instinct would be reverse my course, follow him back to the restroom, hoping to catch his eye. Then, with any luck, upon exiting the throne room, perhaps I could strike up a flirtatious banter with the Adonis, thereby getting his number, or, better yet, arranging a discreet yet torrid assignation. However, tonight of all nights, in full panic mode, I was able to override my baser instincts and let caution be my guide. I feared that he might flush the throne containing my keys. So I abandoned the twig idea for now, circled back, and returned to the restroom, following him in. Just like any self-respecting troll would. Indeed, he started to enter the stall of great peril. Now remember, it's midnight at a rest area. I think I scared the shit out of him when I rushed up behind him and touched him on the shoulder and said, "Please don't use that stall. Use the other one. My keys are in there." His facial expression was a combination of disbelief and disgust. I retreated back outside and finally found a suitable twig. I passed Mr. Cutie exiting the facility while on my way back in. His facial expression had progressed to terror. Trying to prove that I was legitimate, I showed him my stick. He broke into a run, leaving me alone at the entrance. As I re-entered the restroom, I heard his car tires squeal as they sped out of the parking lot. It took 5 frustrating minutes of trial and error and much muttering of swear words before I was finally able to fish the keys out. This experience leaves us with several eternal questions. How do you sanitize keys? What kind of story is Mr. Cutie going to be telling his friends? Is this really the life of most trolls, or just me? Was it the carpal tunnel that caused me to drop the keys, or a subconscious need for adventure? Is this going to give me nightmares? All right. The next column, growing up in an LDS background here in Cache Valley, it was our board's turn to do baptisms for the dead at the Logan Temple. And, okay, here, oh wait, nipples. Ah! Hate wardrobe malfunctions. What?
Be careful of the loop in the cord on the floor. Message from Moser.
Yeah. Heels in the air, no problem. Okay. This is the tale of pioneer woodwork. The road to the temple is fraught with danger and excitement. Way back in the Cretaceous period, when I was just a hormone-throbbing teen, way before I discovered Aquanet and Lee Press on nails, the young men in my Mormon ward were scheduled to go to the temple in Logan and perform some baptisms for the dead. I was both excited to see inside the temple and nervous because I don't really like putting my head underwater that much. We gathered at the church house and packed all 13 of us into 2 cars for the 45-minute ride to the temple. After some subtle, yet very calculated manipulations, I ended up in one of the back seats, solidly wedged up against Derek, towards whom I just had a crush. Teenage hormones being what they were, I began to feel my testimony welling up deep within. As we drove mile after mile, with every additional bump in the road, I soon realized that I was sailing at full mast. As we drew nearer to Logan, and the lighted towers of the temple became visible to us in the car, I became very quiet. I'm sure the other guys thought that I was reverently meditating on the spiritual aspects of baptism. However, in reality, a slow, simmering case of dread had begun to develop within my bosom, that the other guys might be able to bear witness to my testimony when we got out of the car. Luckily for me, when we arrived, there was much general confusion as we exited the cars, and I was able to lag behind the rest just a bit, so I ended up following behind everybody else, thus sparing me this immediate occasion to bear my testimony. Thankfully, the rise in my Levi's subsided during our baptismal orientation. I remember thinking upon viewing the baptismal font, perched on the shoulders of the 12 oxen, that the bridge, and with the bridge leading to it, that the pioneers knew how to produce a very stylish hot tub. My feelings of dread and apprehension reawakened when we got into the group changing room to dress into the white baptismal clothes. Apparently, the pioneers saw no need for private changing booths. Like a frightened mouse, I quickly commandeered the furthest, darkest corner and remained facing into the corner while I changed into my white clothing. Success! I emerged from the changing room all dressed in white and as yet undisgraced, ready to proceed. There were 2 elders assigned to perform the baptisms. The first was just a little old wrinkled wisp of a man, about 60 years old. A medium-sized back wave could have surfed him right out of the font, and we could have skewered him upon the horns of an oxen. The other attendant took my breath away. He was 6'2" with broad shoulders, narrow waist, and perfect teeth that gleamed when he smiled. They actually sparkled. He was everything that a budding Aaronic princess in training could ever have dreamed of. I was immediately accosted with a barrage of impure thoughts. Oh, the horror. To be inside the temple and to have impure thoughts. I'm surely going to hell. The 2 men took turns baptizing the different members of the group. I was immediately torn. I very much wanted Elder Hunk to be the one who grasped me in his strong arms and baptized me, although I was pretty sure that if that were the case, it might precipitate another testimony crisis. As the baptisms began, Elder Hunk entered the pool, and as his clothing became wet, his pristine white shirt clung to his magnificent torso. I could actually see the ridges of his six-pack. God is great indeed. In an effort to purge my impure thoughts, I started to concentrate on the craftsmanship of the ornate pioneer woodwork and moldings in the room. This had a limited amount of success in preventing me from sporting some woodwork of my own. It came to be my turn. I got up and crossed the small bridge into the font, and wouldn't you know it, Elder Hunk was there, waiting at the bottom of the stairs, smiling his perfect smile and holding out his hand, welcoming me into the water. Oh, the thrill. Oh, the horror. Look at that delicately carved handrail. Elder Hunk grasped my shoulders firmly with his tender hands. I sensed a stirring in my groin. That certainly is intricate tile work. He pulled me close to him so that our bodies were touching. Oh my, what a beautiful chandelier. I could feel the power in his hands as they grasped mine. My goodness, that table has a beehive carved in it. His bulging thigh pressed tightly against mine for leverage. Look at that antique doorknob. We began. Any thrill I was experiencing was immediately dissipated as Elder Hunk's muscular arms thrust me under the water, and I was reduced to a sputtering, quivering, nearly drowned princess. We repeated the ceremony 25 times. With each additional rinse and repeat, another thought was washed away. If admiring the woodwork couldn't purge my feelings, the quest for oxygen certainly would. Later, with reputation still intact at least for a few more years, a somewhat soggy princess emerged from the temple, destined to have more impure thoughts on another day. This leaves us with several eternal questions. Is this how hot tub parties began? Can you buy a hot tub perched on top 12 oxen at Home Depot? How difficult would it be to install a hot tub on the shoulders of 12 Adonises? Are baptism ceremonies the origin of wet t-shirt contests? Is this the inspiration for waterboarding? These and other important questions to be answered in the future. All right, let's see. This one's about coming out of the closet. Here we go. Oh, I forgot. Ladies, are you jealous? And they help you find your way at night, too. Okay. The road to conference is fraught with danger and excitement. I had the most unsettling experience last weekend. There I was, dutifully updating my Facebook page, when from the living room I heard the unmistakable, slow and measured drone of what could only be a Mormon general authority. My heart leapt to my throat, thinking they'd come to take me away at last. I snuck down the hallway, gripping a 4-inch stiletto in each hand as weapons. I sprang into the living room, prepared to go all crouching tiger, hidden drag queen on his ass. I was relieved to find the incessant droning was emanating from the television. Apparently Mr. Pap Smear, having gone for a snack, had left the TV on after watching Meet the Press, and it was playing the Mormon General Conference. Suddenly, I was overcome by a whirlwind of memories. The dichotomy of being gay and Mormon and the secret double life I've lived for several years came flooding back into my consciousness. Allow me to reminisce. It all began on a dark and stormy night. It really was a dark and stormy night. It really is true sometimes. A dark and stormy night in April 1985. I was returning home from a mission reunion, still dressed in my white shirt and tie. While driving north on State Street in Salt Lake, I noticed the neon marquee for the XXX rated studio theater, shining like a beacon in the darkness to my 28-year-old starving virgin eyes. Advertised on the marquee was the title, XXX Samurai Dick, starring Ron Jeremy. Ron Jeremy's a legend, just saying. I thought to myself, that's a movie I've never seen. But since I went to Japan on my mission, I thought I might really like it. So in an effort to broaden my horizons, I stopped to check it out. Drawn like a moth to a flame, or more aptly, like a princess to the Estee Lauder counter, I entered the theater. I could barely get my wallet out of my pocket because my nervous hands were trembling so much. It was so dark when I entered the theater that I couldn't see anything at all, so I sat in the very closest chair. There, on the big screen, to my amazement, was Man's Search for Happiness. It was sex. Of course, it was straight sex, but even lima beans can taste good to the starving. And there was a penis involved. Oh, the thrill. Oh, the danger. Oh, the boner. The door to my tightly locked closet was beginning to crack under the pressure of 28 years of denial. In this heightened state of excitement, my spidey senses became electric. I quickly became engrossed in the intricate character-based plot lines of the movie. After a while, I realized that someone was sitting in the very next chair. Soon, I began to sense that his knee was pressing against my leg. I thought perhaps I was encroaching on his personal space, so I withdrew my leg further into my space. Soon his leg was pressing up against mine again, and I finally caught on that it was on purpose. I almost stopped breathing, but I didn't pull my leg away this time. All the while, my eyes remained locked on the movie screen. Soon, his leg was rubbing up and down against mine. Again, I didn't move, still staring at the movie, but I suddenly had an overwhelming urge for some candy to go along with this movie. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 5 minutes, his arm pressed against mine on the armrest. I was beginning to sweat. His little finger gently interlocked with mine, and he slowly drew my hand toward his candy counter. My heart was pounding so hard that I could almost have passed out. There, in his lap, I felt the whole forbidden candy store, firm, warm, and inviting, straining mightily against the restraining fabric of his pants. He rubbed my hand over his packaged sweets and placed my fingers gingerly on the zipper. I slowly, carefully tugged down the zipper to free a large Twizzler from its package. Oh, sweet mystery of life, I finally found you. Just then, a police officer entered the auditorium with a flashlight and began shining up and down the rows of the audience. I quickly withdrew my hand. My neighbor placed his coat over his lap, thereby hiding his candy from prying eyes. All the while, our eyes were locked firmly on the movie screen. After the stormtrooper had finished his inspection and retreated to the foyer, my neighbor again drew my hand back to the Twizzler. Little by little, my fingers continued to explore and found 2 milk balls. Good things really do come in threes. Just as the treats were beginning to melt in my hands and not in my mouth, the stormtrooper was back, inspecting the audience. I lost my nerve and left the theater, vowing that I would return again to find more candy, because my sweet tooth had now been awakened. My only regret, that was in the darkness, I never got a good look at the candy man. Upon a subsequent visit to the theater, I was invited by a very nice gentleman to go with him in his car, where he proceeded to give me my very first laying on of the lips. I surprisingly learned that blow in reality means suck. Who knew? Right in the middle of holding to the rod, so to speak, I was visibly racked with guilt. I stopped and told him that I was a Mormon and I couldn't continue. And he answered, "It's going to be all right. I'm a bishop and you're doing just fine." True story. And he proceeded to finish teaching me the first discussion. And so I began to live a double life of Peter priesthood by day and homo teacher by night. Over the course of the next 4 years, I began to vent all my pent-up frustrations of secret crushes on mission companions, lusting over the studly pictures of Helicon warriors in Sunday school. Any of you girls notice the pictures of Helicon warriors? Whoa. The candy store was open. I secretly explored my sexuality, shall we say, line upon line, precept upon precept, sharing fleeting sexual encounters with a string of fellow nameless closet cases. This left me with a strengthened testimony of holding the priesthood as close and as often as you can catch them. I came to realize that in practice, my body was not a temple, but a visitor center. One Saturday night, I picked up this unbelievably handsome stud and took him home for some homo teaching. This guy was incredible and gave a whole new meaning to the word endowment. After a lengthy, torrid, passionate missionary lesson, our popcorn did indeed pop upon the apricot tree. And give said the little stream gained a whole new meaning. The next morning, in sacrament meeting, I was leading the opening song, a rousing rendition of Come Come Ye Saints, in my single student ward. I noticed during the first verse that Sister Smith had walked in with a date and sat on the back row. I marveled between swishes of the baton at how cute her date was. Ironically, it wasn't until we broke into the stanza of All is Well, that I realized her hot date was the same prospective investigator with whom I had shared family homo evening with the night before. That two-timing hussy. I forgot the words to the song. I lost the beat of the music. I just started waving the baton in a circle like an airplane propeller. My impulse was to flee. When he looked up and saw me, the panic in his eyes was worse than when two queens end up wearing the same frock at a party. I could tell he wanted to bolt to the door as much as I did. For the rest of the meeting, we sat there trying not to make eye contact. After the final amen, he disappeared faster than dresses at Filene's basement sale. After this experience, I began to notice more and more of my homo evening sisters at the church, since my ward shared the same building with 9 other wards. We would pass each other in the foyer like ships in the night, without acknowledging each other. One time, while I was singing in the choir for stake conference, I looked out into the congregation and counted at least 6 former conquests. I was such a good missionary. Perhaps it's time to leave. This leaves us with many eternal questions. Should I trade in my missionary name tag for a diamond brooch? Is licorice the iron rod to which we're supposed to hold? Do general authorities have special classes to learn how to speak in monotones? Or do they just use large amounts of Valium? If I'd run out of the chapel mid-song, would the bishop have noticed? Am I too old to sing I Hope They Call Me on a Mission? And would it be inappropriate? These and other questions to be answered in the future. How are we doing time? One more? Oh, okay. Oh! Pee. Usually they fall down and then I say I've peed on the floor. Okay. The tale of the Hallowed Weenie Festival. The road to being the hostess with the mostest is fraught with danger and excitement. In the world of hostessing, I hold Hyacinth Bouquet and her special candlelight suppers in the highest regard and try to emulate her in every way. With Halloween just passed, I'm reminded of hosting the annual Gender Blender Hallowed Weenie Festival, which I used to organize in Logan on behalf of the Metropolitan Community Church. The concept of the Gender Blender Party is that men come dressed as women and vice versa. Naturally, throw in the few hunks that will use any excuse at all to be nearly naked. Thank you, God. And voila, you have a raging party on your hands. On this occasion, we rented the Whittier Community Center. Is it still? Okay. We rented the Whittier Community Center, an ancient yet grand elementary school, which possesses a magnificent staircase, perfect for any dramatic queen Scarlett O'Hara type entrance. There were about 350 people in attendance, many of whom were quite well lubricated with alcohol. The costumes were varied and magnificent. I myself wore my best pink floral muumuu, evocative of Endora from Bewitched, which happened to be the perfect dress in which to perform hostess duties, as it allowed full range of movement and, most significantly, easy access to my important water-producing private parts. The night started out to be a perfect costume party, but slowly things started to unravel into chaos. We had a couple of drag performances, highlighted by the performance of the late, great Auntie Fern. Fern could walk into any Mormon Relief Society and teach the lesson and not even raise an eyebrow. Lovable Auntie Fern was a very gravity-enhanced girl, approaching 400 pounds. And in a vast departure from her normal self, this night Fern wore a skimpy black teddy, carried a bullwhip, and used a dildo as her microphone, lip-syncing to I Don't Care If the Sun Don't Shine. For some unconceivable reason, this performance of the scantily clad, full-figured dominatrix sent some of the more timid revelers fleeing into the night. To exacerbate the evening, my friend Diane, an actual woman, was very drunk, and she must have been experiencing penis envy, because she was ardently trying to attract an audience so that she could prove that she was able to pee while standing up into the urinal in the men's room. Now, my knowledge of female anatomy is scant enough that I was very curious as to how this feat could be accomplished. If curiosity can kill the cat, in this instance, it could lay waste to an entire throne room full of queens. While the quantum mechanics necessary for such an undertaking defy imagination and all semblance of refinement, I decided that my best hostess option at this juncture was for me to impersonate Monty Python and run away. Later, I stepped outside the building for a breath of fresh air and to check on the comportment of the smokers. I was just showing them all I was able to balance a glass of punch on my boob when I was approached by a police officer, demanding to know who was in charge. He was kind of cute, and I've always had a uniform fetish. I was just about to comment on how authentic his costume was, and I would be more than happy to help him take off that tight gun belt, when I noticed to my dismay several more of Cache County's finest posted strategically around the perimeter of the building. Suddenly, his cuteness factor diminished greatly, and the specter of a 1960s-style bar raid appeared before my eyes. Instantly, my biggest worry was that I was not dressed well enough to have my mugshot taken. Nervously, I explained that I was in charge while I herded the smokers inside the building. The police captain drew me away from the door to an awaiting police cruiser. At this time, I noticed that they had arrived in force with 7 cop cars and a bus. As God is my witness, they brought a bus prepared to haul us all away. Thankfully, I was able to keep my wits about me. After about 15 minutes of intense questioning, I'm sure to determine if I was drunk or high, I told them that this was a church-sponsored dance, and he replied with much skepticism. Trying to be as dignified as possible while dressed as Endora, and suppressing my prison rape fantasies, I told him that my husband was the pastor and I was more than happy to have him come talk to them. The officer got on his radio and called for references for the church and for my husband's references as pastor. After what seemed like an eternity, he received confirmation that we were indeed legitimate and even had a special event permit from the city for the occasion. Neener. He very disappointedly let me go, cautioning us to be quiet. With my narrow escape from the long arm of the law, I returned to the party, trying to keep the underage kids from drinking. A hostess' work is never done. lesson to all, and the lesson to be learned in all of this is that a true queen should constantly be prepared to be arrested at any time. This leaves us with several questions. Is it possible to live up to Hyacinth Bouquet standards? Do you know who Hyacinth Bouquet is? Oh, the younger people, you're losing out. Should I have photographed Diane peeing for posterity's sake? Could I have outrun the cops in my heels? Would police handcuffs match my jewelry? Are prison rape fantasies romantic? If balanced on a boob, does a glass of punch taste better? These and other questions to be answered in future chapters of The Perils of Petunia Pap Smear.